It's like every time there is choice, you're like not sure. Oh my, it's like page. Teachers, please work. Oh. I was thinking the question in the beginning, the one I'm gonna ask will be something about like why might somebody get interested in course design, something like this, to like just, you know, not to specify that it's for teachers or for anybody else, and then we'll kind of move on from there.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's like not about teachers need to learn, but but it's about. Okay. I think we're already live. Actually, it's like, oh come on, Facebook. Sometimes like you give heads up, sometimes you don't. What's wrong with you? Anyway, we can cut. Are we live? Like it never asked me for about the title or anything.
It says recording live on Facebook on my screen.
Okay. Cool or not? Yeah, people are watching this. All right. So this is. I mean, like there used to be a thing. I mean, where you could, because we still have 1 minute to just like, you know, chat about random stuff. I mean, like you usually have this space where you can type what your live is about, and now I don't have this option, you know. Ooh, okay, but the good news, it's working, so let's just focus on that, I guess. And now, David, you're very silent, yeah, because everything you say might be used against you.
I'm letting you concentrate.
Thank you so much. Well, why? Why Facebook? Why? But okay.
Yeah.
And
it's technology. Yeah. Technology is never the teacher's best friend.
I used to think I'm quite good at technology, but but Facebook always beats me. So, right. One more play. Oh, edit post. Okay. So yes, this is something I need to do. I think we can do it live. So live. Hey everybody, we're gonna start in about about a minute, maybe 30 seconds. I just need to type just anything above this video, so you don't get confused on course design, and no typos, hopefully. Yeah, because it's an interesting thing about Facebook Lives, because we do a lot of lives at Teachers Teach Teachers, and we kind of like send everybody, the live will be here, and we send a link to our Facebook group. And I remember when a new member of our team started working, and her job was actually like to take pictures. I mean, like to do a report, like of what's happening on Instagram. So she was like kind of our internal journalist, and she posted pictures. She was watching a live, and she posted pictures on our Instagram, like, "Hey, this is Anita going live with this guest." And I watched it on Instagram, like, sorry, dear, that's a wrong live. I mean, it happened like half a year ago. So instead of the live that was currently happening, Facebook showed her one of the previous lives.
Okay.
And basically, yeah, so because it was on top of the page for her. That's why, yeah, that's why I wanted to type a headline to what we're doing right now. But yes, okay, at least it says that it's us. Let's just start. Anyway, we're recording this and everything will be fine. So hello everybody who's watching us. If you say hello, or just, you know, give us a sign that you are watching and not just scrolling through the page, would be lovely. You can ask questions. You don't have to ask questions if you don't have any, but I always do. So if you don't have questions, the questions will be mine to David, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to ask yours first. So, hello, David, again.
Hello, Anita. And hello, everybody.
It's becoming a nice tradition. I think now we should do it like every 5 months, because last time we met in December.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Yeah, let's make an appointment, a regular appointment.
A regular appointment. Super. See you in 5 months. I'll make a note of that. So today we will be speaking about course design. but there might be some people who never saw you or me and don't know anything about us. So could you please tell us why you are the right person to be talking to about course design?
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say I'm the right person, but
You're not.
I'm a person. Okay, that's a good question. So I've been teaching for nearly 40 years. So obviously I've been teaching and working on courses. But beyond that, I've worked as an academic manager in 3 different British Council schools. And as part of that, I have partly been responsible for designing courses for other teachers to be working on. And I've also designed courses that I myself was going to be teaching. So there's 2 aspects there. One as a teacher, one as a manager, designing or co-designing courses. And thirdly, for people that work within a school, you'll be familiar with inspections that come around every 3 or 4 years, where there's a huge amount of documentation required. And one of the things inspectors focus on is the courses that exist within the school and how they are designed. So I've also been responsible for preparing that documentation for inspectors. So I've seen course design, if you like, from different perspectives over the last nearly 4 decades. So I have some experience about course design.
Wow, it's quite a lot of experience. Yeah,
Enough.
sounds amazing. Enough. Okay, right. So we should just go ahead with the questions. Right. So my first question then would be, okay.
I think I've lost you.
Hi.
Yeah, you're back. You froze there for a second.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. My internet says my connection is unstable, of course, today now. All right. So you should do all the talking. I'll be just, dropping some questions at you. Why would somebody actually get interested in learning about course design?
It's a very interesting question because, again, it does depend a little bit on where you're working and how you're working. So someone, for example, working within a school, as opposed to someone working freelance, perhaps using Zoom for their lessons, it's a slightly different perspective. However, there is a distinction between teaching a course and designing a course. Mm-hmm. And there's an author called West who came up with a term called TENOR, TENOR, which stands for Teaching English for No Obvious Reason. And let's be honest. Let's be honest. And I include myself in this. We've all done that. When teachers are extremely busy, that lesson after lesson after lesson, and sometimes you just plan your lessons almost like a series of one-offs almost. Or maybe teachers, again, because of pressures of work, just follow the book. So you still, as a teacher, might be delivering excellent lessons, but they are principally a series of one-offs. And that is not a course. A course is something which has a structure and a purpose, and most of all, an end result. So in terms of why should teachers be designing a course, whether that process is a very short and relatively simple one, maybe for someone doing a one-to-one lesson, for example, or a more complicated version where you're working in a school and you're designing courses that other teachers are going to be teaching. Either way, the principle is the same, that you have to have as your priority your learners. And the priority for them is, why are they there? Why are they learning? So what are the end objectives? So we talk about an aim or aims of a lesson that we teach, also aims of a series of lessons that we teach, but we should also have the aims of the entire course that we're teaching. If it's 12 weeks, for example, where do we want our learners to be at the end of those 12 weeks? And how do we know, and how will they know that they have met the standard that we've set out for them? So why should we be designing a course for our learners? Is a simple answer to that.
Right. And if we're speaking about a school or a freelancer who's teaching, why would they need to develop for freelancer themselves, or why would a school ask somebody to develop a course for them when there are lots of course books? I mean, course book is
Yeah,
already a course designed, you know, why would you need anything else?
it could be, but isn't necessarily the case for two reasons. One, because some books are better than others, obviously. The more modern books are very good, generally, in the way they lay out the contents page. They link the topics and the language with the CEFR can-do
Mm-hmm.
statements very often, and that provides good focus, good continuity. But of course, there's no point having it there if the teachers aren't following that and aware of those can-do statements. In other words, you could end up just teaching the book almost unaware of what it is you're doing and what it is you're focusing on and what it is you're aiming to do by the end of that course. So that's one thing. You've got to get away as a teacher from simply following the book, because the other point here is needs analysis. Because if I'm teaching, let's say, a group of B1 learners using, let's say, I don't know, Empower as my course book, and I follow the book, and then 6 months later, I have another B1 group and I have Empower again, and I follow the book. And the two courses are exactly the same. But that can't be the case because my learners are different individually and collectively. So there has to be a form of needs analysis before and during a course, whereby existing and emerging individual learner needs and objectives are integrated within that course. In other words, the course book now becomes, if you like, a living document that you are adapting and supplementing according to the needs of your learners and with the end objectives in sight. Now, if you're doing all of that, yes, you have a course.
Mm-hmm.
And that, in a sense, is the simplest form of a course. But it is not a course if you're simply picking up the book and say, okay, what am I doing today? Okay, I'm going to follow the book, and again tomorrow, and again the next day. There's no continuity, there's no connection. And I often talk about the importance of connecting the dots to form a bigger picture. And I'll tell you a story here, if I may, just to underline this point.
Sure.
When I was working at a school, the students had a 3-hour lesson in the morning from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock with a course book. And some of them did an extra hour, actually 55 minutes, from 12:15 until 1:10. Different class, different students, different teacher. But both the students and the teacher, for them, it was the 4th hour of the day. And when I was working there as an academic manager, we would read feedback from students all the time. And those 1-hour classes, the feedback was very consistent in what it was saying. And it was along the lines of, we love our teacher, great lessons, but we don't see the point. There's no connection. The students themselves, time and time again, say, we can't see what the objective is, where it's going. Today, we do a lesson about travel using vocabulary. Tomorrow, we're going to do a lesson on holidays using the first conditional sentence. On Wednesday, we're going to do this, on Thursday, but where's the connection? And I thought that was incredibly interesting, that the learners themselves were spotting the fact that there was no obvious continuity or connection between the lessons. They saw no end objective to the month that they were doing, only objectives to individual lessons. So that, again, is another reason why we have to think as teachers beyond the single lesson.
Thank you. And again, so many things to ask. But if we're speaking about this, because this is something that, I mean, I'm thinking all the time, because, yeah, so what we do at Teachers Teach Teachers, for example, we follow the book. And for some reason, I guess the phrase to follow the book became something negative, you know, in a way, like just follow the book, you're a lazy teacher. But to me, follow the book actually means that you understand what the objectives are and you actually follow the book because it's a really like well-structured course.
Yeah.
And yeah, so what is there always different is like you and your students. Yeah.
Sure.
So even when you teach with a book, the course is different.
Yes. And Yeah, there's 2 points. Yes, you're absolutely right. The students make it different. But if we go back for a moment to end objectives, any good course, again, whatever the format, whatever the context is of that course, you want your learners at the end of the course to have achieved something. So again, if we talk about, obviously, so if we talk about the CEFR level descriptors, they will say, at the end or by the end of this course, students will be able to say that I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. These are real world end objectives, very communicative objectives. And that, therefore, is what teachers and learners are working towards. So with a course design, I always say that you need to begin at the end. You have to look at what are my objectives, what more importantly are my learner objectives at the end of this course, 12 weeks from today. And then when you're following the book or using your own materials and when you're planning your lessons, if you have those objectives in mind and you are delivering a series of lessons that focus on those end objectives, then following the book is a perfectly okay thing to do. If, however, you're following the book without any understanding of these end objectives, any understanding of where the journey is leading your learners towards, then that is much less useful, has much less focus for the learners. So as with a lesson, you start with your aim, and then you plan your lesson to meet the aim. So with a course, you start with your objectives, and then you make sure that the lessons you deliver meet those objectives, so that by the end of the course, you can make your students understand and recognize that they can now do something either much, much better, or at least a little bit better than they could 12 weeks before. And therefore they will see, okay, that's why I did the course. That was the reason. And the other point to pick up on here, which I think is incredibly important in relation to this, I often have found, as a teacher as well, and also a manager listening to students, that students will often say, I don't feel I've made any progress, even though you, the teacher, know they have. So that is why, as part of assessment, if you like, continuous ongoing assessment, as well as end of course assessment, it is really important for the teacher to make the students recognize the progress they've made. And that can be done as simply as saying, well, 12 weeks ago, could you do this? No. Can you do it today? Yes. Can you do it better today? Yes. Good. You've made progress. So this demonstration of progress, the demonstration of meeting objectives, for me, this is really what a course design is all about. Whether you're working in a school, teaching a course that someone else has designed, or you're teaching a course that you yourself has designed, possibly as a freelancer.
Thank you. Moving on from course books to courses, course design, but there's like one thing that connects these two thoughts in my head. But before that, I just wanted to do a little bit of promotion, because we actually recently had a very nice webinar, Teachers Teach Teachers. For those of you who are part of the program and are watching this, make sure you watch Marina Dolgachova's webinar on needs analysis, because we just were talking about this the other day. And an interesting thing I noticed again while working with teachers, and we do have peer planning sessions at TTT, so we all come and plan our lessons together, following the same book. But what I realized that sometimes teachers switch parts of oh, I'll start with this, I'll do that, then I'm gonna add this video, and when you ask them why, they would be perplexed for a couple of minutes. So what I'm asking, because you said you designed several courses for in-school use for other teachers to teach your course. How do you make sure that teachers actually teach your course and not something else?
That is such a good question. And this is when we get into the context of a school, and especially when it's a bigger school with lots and lots of teachers. And what is important here was two things, really. That when you're designing a course, and often the focus there in terms of the work involved is with the managers. You have to involve at least some teachers in the process. There has to be a collaborative process, because the last thing teachers should be faced with is, here is the course, teach it. And they've had no chance to look at it beforehand in some way or other. Now, when I say in some way or other, that could be, for example, trialing a course book that the school is thinking of using for this course. And it could be, okay, can you try this book for a month? Here's the course syllabus. Here's everything that we've said on paper about this course. Do you think, as an experienced teacher, that these materials suit what we've written down? Is there a, again, connecting the dots, is there a connection between the book and the syllabus? Because the syllabus should include things like definitely the material being used, for example, and how the objectives meet the contents of the book. There has to be, again, that connection. But also the syllabus should give some idea of how the learners are going to be assessed during and at the end of the course. So if, for example, the syllabus says that learners will have a progress test once a week, the teachers need to be doing a program. Well, for example,
that's a bit harsh.
Okay, once a month. Let's go for once a month.
So thank you.
If the teachers don't know that they're supposed to be giving a progress test once a month, then they're not delivering the course that is being promised, which is reflected on the website and in the brochures, which the learners or maybe the parents of the learners have read. They say, well, where's this progress test that was promised? Or maybe the syllabus says that, you know, one day a week, the teacher will teach something using authentic material. If the teacher doesn't know that that's what it says, and they don't do that, again, they're not delivering the course that has been promised. So there has to be communication with the teachers. You can't just give them the course. They have to understand what it is, what's being promised, how the school has promised it will be delivered, and in what format. Because if the teachers are going in a completely different direction through no fault of their own, that is when those astute learners that I mentioned before who spot things will say, well, hang on a second. I've looked at the website. I've looked at what's been promised. This is not what I'm getting. And that's the issue. And,
wow,
and that's
where do you get those students? Like,
but
actually read the website.
I always find the need to, the more students pay, the more astute they become.
Okay.
Because I'm talking about fee-paying students here. But this is the challenge in a school of the communication, because some courses have existed for quite a long period of time. And teachers just need to understand what it is that the course is supposed to be delivering. But beyond that, as I said before, the main thing is that they have to understand what the end objectives are. And just picking up on one thing about course books, if I may, because I mentioned just now about trialing a course book. And a couple of years ago, I was asked to do this. Again, the school was designing a new course, or not a new course, they were making changes to an existing course. And they wanted to trial a new course book. And they asked me and a couple of other teachers to trial the same book, which was at different levels. So let's just say course book elementary, course book intermediate, whatever. And I was very excited. We were all very excited. We love trialing new course books. And usually I find course books, some things are good, some things are not so good, but overall they're fine. But this book, and I'm not going to give you the name of the book, was absolutely disastrous. The worst course book I've ever used in my life. And the other two teachers thought exactly the same thing. And the students hated it as well. It was just an awful book, which was impossible to use. Now, we were lucky. We could then report back to the managers and say, no, don't use this book. And they didn't. And then they said, what book do you think we should use? Imagine, though, if the managers had said, we have made a decision. This is the course. This is the book for the next 2 years. Use it. No communication.
Yeah, but I mean, if you work for a state school, for example, sometimes you don't have a choice.
I've never had,
you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
That's different. As a teacher, I've never had a choice in my life about the course book. But some schools, when they are making a decision to change a book, if they're sensible, they will get the opinion of a teacher first. It doesn't mean the teacher's using the course book, but they might reject a suggested course book. But no, I'm the same as you. I've never in 40 years been able to choose my course book. Never.
Just let's ask, I don't know, there are some people who are watching us, guys, if you've ever been asked by a school director or director of studies, like if this a book you'd like to use for the next 2 years. So if you've ever been in a situation like this, please tell us, or if that's the opposite, like if you're like us, tell us too. So while I was listening to you, just a very quick question. So you said teachers need to be actually not like taught how to use the course, but basically, yeah, they need more information about this. So when it's like a school, do you recommend like to have a meetup with the teachers, or should it be like an email sent to everybody, or how do you organize this?
It could be either, as long as there's communication taking place. Now, obviously, we can make a distinction here between an ideal world and reality. And as you say, in an ideal world, this communication will take place, but in reality, sometimes it doesn't. So I am talking here about what, in an ideal situation, how it should be. But it should involve, if we're lucky, some form of communication. A meeting is great. It's not always possible to do that. It wouldn't necessarily involve all teachers. An email, of course, can go out to all teachers, maybe with a questionnaire, for example. But in terms of course, if I'm going to start next Monday, for example, teaching a course of my school that I haven't taught before, let's call it, I don't know, B1 Speaking and Listening. That's the name of the course. I then would straight away want to find out, okay, well, is there a written syllabus for this? Are there designated materials? What are you, my school, expecting me to do on this course in terms of what are my objectives with my learners? As a responsible, conscientious teacher, I would want to do that rather than just say, okay, listening and speaking. Okay, I'll do a lesson each day which focuses on listening and speaking, but there's no course, there's no continuity, there's no end objective. So the key word for me is awareness. Teachers need to be made aware. It's not their responsibility. The manager should make it their responsibility. But teachers should be aware at the beginning of a course in a school of what this course is, how they are expected to deliver it, for example, in terms of materials, and crucially, what the objectives are of this course. Those objectives may be slightly flexible. They should be slightly flexible according to the individual needs of the learners within that particular class, obviously. But as a broad description of objectives, they should already be in place. As in, by the end of this course, students will be able to boom, 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 boom.
I see.
But if teachers don't know that, then
no, it's like yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a great thought. By the way, how long does it take you normally to design a course? Say for like one, let's say academic year, which is like an hour scenario, it's usually 9 months.
It's difficult to answer that, to be honest, because often, well, in terms of a specific figure, if you're going into the course in its entirety, so if you're in a school, for example, and you want to have an educational philosophy for that school, you want to have a curriculum, you want to have a syllabus, you want to have the schemes of work, something I mentioned in just a moment, actually, but you have to have schemes of work. You have to have all the materials. You have to have the end objectives. You have to discuss it, communicate, have meetings, come up with a draft document, check it with your teachers. If you go through all of this process, you're talking about, again, depends on the length of the course, but let's just say a few months, quite possibly. But bearing in mind, you're not focusing on that as your full-time job. You're doing 2,000 other things as well as that. So you're not, if I had only sat down to design a course and I had no other work to do, it would take much less time, of course. But a long time if you're going to do it properly and thoroughly. If, however, you are a freelancer working at home, perhaps with your own students, then no, you're talking about a very short period of time, because then you're looking at understanding your course book, understanding the objectives, checking your students and their needs, and integrating those. There's much less involved because, as I said before, if you're in a school designing a document, you also you always have to have at the back of your mind that dreaded word. Do you know what the dreaded word is? Inspections. Yes, inspections. Because when those inspectors, British Council, equals whoever, come around every 3 or 4 years, they want, they have to see documents that describe in great detail every aspect of the courses the teachers are teaching. And then, and this comes back to this communication, when they have their meeting with teachers, which they do, and it's always very deceptive, Anita, because they're always very friendly and very relaxed, but they're actually there with a mission, not to test or trap or trick, but they want to make sure that the teachers themselves are aware of what has been written down, to make sure that these dots are being connected, that the course is being delivered as promised. The inspectors, although everyone hates inspectors, they're not there to make life difficult. They're there to help the school, to help the teachers, and ultimately to help the learners get the best possible deal. But if you are designing a course within a school, you have to always bear in mind when the inspectors come, what do they need to see in terms of documentation? And I'll give you one example, something we haven't mentioned yet, which is very important, which is schemes of work. Now, inspectors always expect to see a scheme of work. Now, when I was working at International House in London, those schemes of work were 1 week at a time. So teachers were expected on the Monday morning to have in place a flexible, not detailed, quite general description of what the learners were going to do in the 5 days ahead. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, these are the objectives. This is what we're going to be focusing on. There was flexibility within that, obviously, but there was some kind of framework in place. Inspectors, for example, always expect to see schemes of work. If the teachers don't know that, then when the inspectors come and say, where's your scheme of work? Then that, if you like, is a black mark against the school because those schemes of work are not in place. But those schemes of work are not just there and should never just be there for inspectors. Nothing should ever be done for inspectors. It should be done for the learners. And schemes of work I find very interesting because when they were introduced as a formal requirement at my school, a lot of teachers were really unhappy about it. They said it's like a straitjacket. And I understand why. But there's two things here about schemes of work. They are not unmovable documents. They are just a rough plan. It means the teacher and the students have, again, some kind of end objective to the week. So you're getting away from this TENOR, teaching English for no obvious reason. It shows the students that the teacher has been planning how things are going to connect and what the objectives are. When I started doing these schemes of work, they take a bit of time, but it then reduced my day-to-day planning time because I already knew in advance roughly what I'll be doing each day. But far more importantly than that, this is where schemes of work fit into course design, because we're talking here about continuity and objectives and connecting those dots. When I started doing these schemes of work, I used to give out a copy on Monday morning to each student and put one up on the notice board. And my reaction, my instinct was that the students were very, very positive about receiving these schemes of work. And after a period of time, I did a survey with students. Basically, what do you think about these schemes of work? Do you like them? A series of questions. 100% they loved them. And the comments that came back were almost always the same, along the lines of, it shows us where we're going. It shows that the teacher has planned. It shows us the connection. It shows us progress. It gives me an idea of what's coming next. It was 100% positive. So schemes of work are not for inspectors. They might be an irritant sometimes for teachers, but they are benefiting the learners. And if they're benefiting the learners, Do you remember before I talked about the feedback from students? We don't see the connection between lessons. These students did see the connection between the lessons because it was there in front of them on paper. That's all part of course design. Joining the
Right.
dots, the bigger
Joining the
picture.
dots. So would you say that maybe like learning about course design, it can sometimes like be useful in a way, not for everybody who's just planning to do their own course, but actually it helps understand how other courses work.
Absolutely. Because I think, again, if I speak about myself as a teacher now, particularly when I was a much younger teacher, because I'm extremely old now, I'm 122 years old.
Oh.
But when I when I was a when I was a much younger teacher, I would do what teachers do. I would pick up my book, I would teach my lessons. Fingers crossed that there would be good lessons, students would enjoy them. But I didn't at that point really get my head around the idea of a course. I was doing the sort of lesson by lesson, perhaps week by week, but the end objectives were less obvious to me as a young, inexperienced teacher. Now, particularly as my experience as a manager has given me, I understand the work, the detail involved in designing a good course, but more importantly, I understand as a teacher the value of having a coherent course in place. This word coherence again is very important because that sums up this joining of the dots. Coherence is everything makes sense. I know why I'm doing this, whether I'm the teacher or I'm the learner. I understand why I'm doing this. I understand the connection between yesterday and today and between next week and this week. And this coherence is what teachers, I'm sure they do anyway, but to an even greater extent, can learn more about from studying or learning about course design.
Thank you. Because, yeah, I think this is something that helped me a bit when I learned about how the course book is structured, for how it's being written. And I think I started using my courses that I use much better. And the interesting thing is that I think this summer you're doing the course for Dmitry Nikitin School about course design. But also, like for my in my project, Teachers Teach Teachers, for the year 3, because it's a 3-year program. So the third year participants, they actually were studying a strand on materials development. We'll be doing like working like short, maybe 4-lesson courses, like very like just something to have time to write
Yeah.
during the course. And it's going to be like a yearly program as well. So could you please, I'll tell my participants everything about our materials development course later on, but could you please tell everybody about what you'll be doing this summer?
Sure. And this, of course, is both what you have described and what I'm going to describe. This is all part of professional development. So even if teachers aren't going to be sitting down and designing courses, just a greater understanding of how courses are designed and what's involved, just for knowledge purposes, that is also professional development, which is great to do. So yes, I'm going to be doing a 2-day course. It's 4 hours on the Saturday and 4 hours on the Sunday. With school owners, with school directors and managers, with teachers, looking at, in a sense, everything we've talked about today, but in much, much greater detail. So we'll be looking at what we call the 4 layers of planning. So that's curriculum, syllabus, schemes of work, lesson plans and methodology. And we'll also be looking at the importance of a school having an educational philosophy. We'll be looking for 2 hours at assessment, how that takes place during a course, at the end of a course, this whole idea of end objectives. We'll also be looking at managing change. So when you have a course that is 5 years old and a bit out of date, and you want to change your course book, what's the best way to go about this? So we'll be looking, for example, at an example process which involves teachers in this ideal world that we talked about, a process whereby a course can be modified for whatever reason. So everything we've talked about today, but in 8 hours rather than half an hour.
Yeah, now it's like
And also, of course, I will be showing a few examples of completed courses that have been designed within a school, which demonstrates how everything does correlate the syllabus, the assessment, the course materials, the teaching methodology, how it all goes together in one document, which will satisfy inspectors and satisfy managers, be clear to teachers, be clear to students.
Yes, I guess like I'm a freelance. I used to be, now I'm more of a like yeah. So this is something I need to think about as a because I run a school now. But I think when you're a freelancer, when you're a teacher, you never think of these extra
No,
materials that need to be developed on top of the just like course you're
yeah.
doing.
But don't
Yeah,
forget,
so
but don't forget, Anita, that someone who's a freelancer today, next year might be working in a school.
nah, I would not recommend that.
No,
I think freelancing is the best.
maybe not you, but I've done it. I've gone for I went from school to freelancer to school back to freelancer. So
Different. Okay. No, it depends on so many things, of
yeah, of
course. It's
course, of
just yeah.
course,
So
yeah,
we're all so different. No, just kidding.
yes,
Right. No, that's why I think like the courses that we do, our like you do for Dmitry and ours, like are very actually in the end are going to be very very different because again, like I think the aims of your course are a bit different from what we do. So I
yeah,
would like for everybody who's watching, I would recommend to do both.
yes.
Yeah,
So would I.
depending on where because we're just going to focus more on material development, not on that
Yeah.
extra thing that needs to be done. But
But
it's
I think you're absolutely right, Anita, because they will supplement each other. And I think
mm-hmm.
so I'm a Libran, and Librans like balance. And what you
Ah.
just described is a perfect balance. When you look at a subject which may not necessarily be directly applicable to you in your context now, but it's still good to know how
Mm-hmm.
the other side works, if you like.
So true. That's what I like about collaborating with the Dmitry Nikitin School. I think it's always a perfect balance. We do,
Yes.
I think, look at many things because they just had an observations course, and we'll be doing a lot of observation and
Yeah.
feedback next year. But it's always like different angles, and there's never
Well,
enough time to learn about it and then implement it. So it's like all
exactly.
revision and
I mean,
recycling.
I did that observation course for Demetria, and there was so much feedback afterwards, 2 or 3 or months later, to me from participants saying, "Wow, what a difference this has made to observations
Mm-hmm.
in my school." So again, this whole idea of learning, and sometimes to say, "Well, this won't work in my context, but that does," and it's
Mm-hmm.
picking what is useful for you, but still being aware of what isn't at the moment relevant, but might be in the future. But this awareness is a great thing in
Yeah.
professional development, understanding what other people are doing.
Thank you so much. I think I'm gonna just quote this, and we'll make it our TDT motto. So our whole project is about awareness. That's why, like, we invite different teachers to run different workshops, and so our participants can actually have a look what there is around, available for them, and then like go and learn somewhere more about something that they think is relevant for them. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you
So
so much, Anita. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
thank you, guys. If you have any questions, I think David is on Facebook. So basically, if you post any questions under the video, if you are watching this later, he might like them or maybe even answer them. You never know. Or just join the course. We'll attach all the links to this video if Facebook allows us. Hopefully, it will. And I'll see you in 5 months then.
I look forward to it. Thanks very much, Anita. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you, guys, for watching. Bye.